So let's start with the class. Um, we're talking about today. We're gonna be talking about crops that we can still start this season before the winter, right? Because even there are some crops that we can still keep growing during the winter. But today is just fall gardening. Also bulbs, perennials, what to plant right now so we can have in the spring, lawn care and how to prepare our lawn for the winter, and what to prune, what not to prune this fall to avoid losing some flowers next year, and some tips or practices for wildlife. So wildlife friendly gardening. That's the word for that. As usual, I ask you if you want to ask anything at some point, let me know in the chat or just unmute your microphone and um ask about anything that you want during the class. And the recording is going to be available in the next couple days, probably next week, in the YouTube channel, the CCE Allegany Horticultural channel. And that's it. So let's start. So some of the quick growing fall crops that we can start right now. So we have less options, right? We cannot start tomatoes, for example, or peppers right now, but we can start with something smaller and fast. So, for example, leafy greens. These are, for example, spinach, or arugula, lettuce, some mix of greens, even microgreens, kale, these leafy greens that we can be enjoying and harvesting, keep harvesting. And we can start that outdoors, also indoors. So when we are talking about indoors for leafy greens, we can go even all year round growing our own salad. That's basically growing our own salad. And for root crops, so we have radishes that they grow in less than a month. So about 25 days, we have radishes ready. Turnips, they take a little longer, 35 to 50 days, and beets. So in that case, for beets, because we are starting just right now, if you're starting beets right now, just keep in mind that they are going to be small, right? Smaller. Sorry, to have the big ones, the bigger ones, we need to start early, like, right? So especially during the summer or even spring to have these big beets. But about beets, so we can eat the whole plant. So something that you can start right now and have some little beets. And for brassicas like bok choy, mustard greens, so they like the cool environment. So that's something that we can still grow during this season. So now, how about some cool season brassicas, for example, Brussels sprouts, cabbage. So these ones we can start during the summer and then harvest before the winter, right? But not right now. So if there is a question about that, about brassicas, specifically brassicas, like here. Now, there are some bulbs and perennials, so not only just something to eat, not only vegetables um, or leafy greens, we also have flowers, something beautiful for the next season. So this is the perfect time of the year we can start our bulbs and perennials for the next season, for the spring. Well, 2 seasons, right? For the spring. So we can start with tulips, daffodils, sorry about that, uh, crocuses, and we can start planting these ones right now. About some perennials, so for example, cornflowers, black-eyed Susans, peonies, and hostas. So we can start these ones. Just a tip for planting tips. I think I included those ones here. Yeah, and it was that planting about if the bulb is couple inches big, so if it's like this big, so you visualize about 2 or 3 times the size of that bulb, and you can plant as deep as 2 or 3 times. So if that makes sense. So if, for example, this is just an eraser, is that big, so I'm gonna plant this one about this. So it's gonna be deeper, right? So usually, just an example for for crocuses and for tulips, it's about 5 inches deep, but just it's easy when you have the bulb and just think 2 or 3 times that size, you go deep that uh, those inches. And you can water, deep watering, and that's it. You can forget about those ones for a couple months, and then for the next season, you see how they start uh, sprouting. So you can see these little plants, and then you have beautiful flowers. So these ones, they are easy to plant. They are not really challenging, and especially because during the summer, during the winter, we don't have animals digging there or basically anything or microorganisms or something that can affect the bulbs. So of course we have some bulbs that they don't really sprout, they just rot. But in general, most of them they germinate. So that's the key for bulbs. Just deep water and that's it. Now you can protect about temperature and especially with the winters when it's these periods of heavy snow and then it's freezing temperatures and then goes back to above 32 degrees. So these periods of freezing thaw, to protect the bulbs from that, you can add mulch. So about your water well and then add mulch for that insulation. About 2 inches of mulch is enough. Some people go above that and about 4 inches of mulch. Not that much. It's not necessary that much of mulch. Just about 2 inches, you're gonna be good with that. And also keep in mind for our region, so for Allegheny County, we have a zone 5, just few areas that we have a zone 6A, but it's mostly zone 5. So in that case, we can start right now. So about the vegetables, like I mentioned before, these ones, the bulbs, and also the leafy greens, root crops, and brassicas. You can start for this zone, you can start right now. So, um, like right now, today, this weekend, we can start right now, early to mid-October, and just keep in mind the harvesting times, right? So, for example, for radishes, we are like, yeah, still have plenty of time. For something like beets, in that case, you can start as soon as possible. For leafy greens, same, early to mid-October, uh, that's fine. Especially when you are going to bring some of these leafy greens, some lettuce, arugula, bring those ones indoors so you can have that indoors for a longer time. So in that case, no problem. For the ones that you're going to be growing outside, yeah, start as soon as possible. Now, to extend a little bit the season and just protect the plants from freezing temperature, especially the air, and that's the one that can be uh, making things a little challenging for the plants, especially when they are small. In that case, you can cover the plants using some row covers like this. You can see here in this picture, um, or low tunnels that is like this, something like this, using wire. You can create these structures like that and using some fabric that it can be agricultural fabric that is special for this, or just sometimes even just old bed sheets that they are and not too thick, not dark colors, because the plant needs the light, right? And needs air. But you can reuse some of this material if you want, if you are on a budget. And in that way, also, I forgot the cold frames. So cold frames are here we can see in this picture, like this. So you can even build your own cold frames. And in that way, you create like this mini greenhouse. It's like a tiny greenhouse there. You create the greenhouse effect, increasing a little bit the temperature so you can grow some herbs, just smaller ones, right? So with this method, you can also be growing, for example, lettuce, cabbage, but cabbage is going to take a little longer, but lettuce. For example, this is something good when you have space indoors to be growing your lettuce, and you keep a cold frame outdoors and still growing some lettuce outside. So that is a good method for that. So for this, using something to protect the plants, these examples here, you can extend the season even to November, and for cold, hardy plants, like for example lettuce, it's a perfect example that you can still grow lettuce uh, dur- um, during the winter using something like this, a cold frame. So, and they keep growing slow compared to the summer. They grow slower, of course, because the freezing temperatures, but it's possible. So just something to keep in mind if you're not in a rush to keep the lettuce growing that fast. And you can go also for the baby or cut and come again varieties. So, for example, for spinach, so you can grow some spinach and harvest early. So that's what we call the baby spinach. So there is not like two different varieties. It's mostly that you harvest early, right? And the cut and come again is when you, for example, have arugula, lettuce. Um, there are some plants like these that we can use. I forget the other ones. But the perfect examples, Eurogolam, some lettuce that you can be harvesting the outer leaves and then let the leave the younger ones, the younger leaves growing. So you only go harvesting around the mature leaves and taking that. Or sometimes just cutting the plant and just the bottom of the lettuce, you put that in water or back in the soil, and then you have again more lettuce growing. I think that's something that probably you have seen online, some people doing these experiments at home, and like, yeah, that works because yeah, it actually works. And like it works for celery, it works for carrots, it works for lettuce, cabbage. So something that onions too. You harvest the plant, but you leave that the bottom of the plant. For the carrots, it would be the top of the plant. And they grow and they keep growing and growing. So you cut and come again to harvest. So that's a method that you can use, or if not, just keep planting. So if you are thinking, for example, for leafy greens, that's something that if you go indoors, you constantly plant and harvest. So, for example, arugula, we cannot do really something like that. You basically harvest one because the root system is too small. So, in that case, when you cut, it dehydrates fast. So in that case, not exactly to be using the cut and come again, but you can start planting, for example, 2 weeks in between. So in that case, you have harvest of arugula every 2 weeks. So that's the idea. That's called succession planting. Succession planting. So it's up to you. You can start thinking about this if it's something for outdoors, if it's indoors, and about timing. What is the best timing for you and the time that you have your personal time, right? Because the plants they still need to be watered, to be fertilized, so you still need to take care of the plants. Something nice with the fall and even early winter is that pests and diseases they go down. It's not like you have to be spraying the plants all the time or checking on any insects or pests that they can be there eating your plants. So that's something positive for cold season that the insects and the diseases they don't like much to be growing during this time of the year. And for harvest, so here you can see some carrots. And I didn't mention carrots, right? Because we're not planting carrots right now, but we are harvesting. If you started your carrots early, a couple months ago, so you can be harvesting those ones now, or waiting until like first or second frost. And in that case, they're gonna be a little sweeter. The flavor doesn't change that much, but just a little bit, because in that case, the nutrients natural nutrients, oils, sugars, they go back to the root of the plant. So in that case, after the first or second frost, uh, they are a little sweeter, and it's the best time to be harvesting. So the best way is just gently loosen the soil, especially when you want to sell the carrots or share with someone else and you want the whole plant, right? The root, the actual carrot, and the leaves. So in that case, when you just pull like that, well, if the soil is nice and is loosen a little bit, no problem at all. But sometimes you pull the carrot and you just get the leaves and the root is still there. So that's not a problem if it's just for you, for yourself, to, but for commercial purposes, if you want to sell or share that, the whole plant and make that like beautiful uh, carrot bouquet of, that would be like a bouquet of carrots. That's actually nice to share with someone, something that you can eat. So in that case, yeah, be careful when you're harvesting this time of the year. And for leafy greens like kale, spinach, lettuce, like I mentioned this before, you can be harvesting the outer leaves first, and then the plant keeps growing. So you have couple harvest from this, not only just one harvest, and that's it. And if you want to even, that's something that you can do. You have, for example, the uh, cabbage, lettuce outdoors, and you harvest the plant, and you want to keep growing that one now indoors. So in that case, not a problem. You can cut just the bottom, leave a couple inches of the plant of uh, the stem of the plant, just the bottom, and put in a little bit of water, just the bottom of the plant touching the water, and that's it. I actually have a plant here. It's not leafy green, it's not cabbage, but it's a succulent. So I don't know if you can see here. It's just a succulent that I started to root. So probably you can see some of the root. I'm gonna try to put close. Nah. Uh, yeah, probably like that you can see. So here is the root and here is the plant. So this is something that I use and you can use this method. So in that way, you make sure that the top of the plant is not under the water, only the bottom of the plant that we want to create roots from there. It's in touch with the water. This is just for succulents, but for like for celery, for lettuce, sometimes you can use even tooth sticks to or anything really just to hold the bottom of the plant so it's not completely underwater, just touching the water. And you will see roots coming fast, just couple, even 1 or 2 weeks, sometimes even just couple days. And then you move that to a pot, soil, watering, and you see new plants coming. So that's something nice that we can keep harvesting, right? Now, also for some of the plants that you are still harvesting from the season, from the summer, when it's about pumpkins or squash or pumpkins, just you know how sometimes pumpkins they can last even a year on the counter and they are still fine, they don't rot, nothing. So something to encourage that is, for example, this just allowing 2 to 3 inches from the stem to be uh, there on top of the fruit. This is the fruit body, right? So in that case, the top. So something not too long like this, so more than 5, 6 inches of the stem, because in that case that start rotting too. So just short, not too short, so about 2 to 3 inches, and that's it. So it creates um, like a seal for the plant. So no fungus or bacteria or anything can really go in there inside of the squash or the pumpkins, and they can last for months, right? no need to put it in the refrigerator, just over the counter. They can last for months in there, especially when you have a lot of them and you don't know like what to do with this. Because this happens a lot, right? With zucchinis, with squash, pumpkins that you harvest, and then there was a saying, right, about one person in the neighborhood is growing zucchinis or squash or pumpkins, and then the whole neighborhood has pumpkins and squash. And sometimes you try to give away some of those, and like everybody's having the same issue because these plants they produce a lot. Sometimes they produce a lot of them. So this is a way that you can keep your squash, your pumpkins for a long time. Sometimes even a year or more than a year, and the squash is still good, the pumpkin is still good. And for these ones, they are more susceptible to cold temperatures. So in that case, if you have any squash, pumpkin plants, zucchini, so in that case, before the first frost. For this, the tubers like beets, radishes, carrots, especially carrots, beets, turnips, you wait even the first frost or even the second frost, and they are sweeter. So in that case, even some people they allow that to go in November, December for carrots, turnips, beets, adding a little bit of mulch just to protect the roots. But in that case, they can keep harvesting, and it has some sweet flavor. With carrots, something to keep in mind, not allowing the plant to be too long in the soil, because in that case, sometimes they crack, right? So when you pull the carrot, it's open, it's cracked, and it's high in fiber. That is not even nice to the texture to be chewing. That is more, is strong, is high in fiber. For carrots, for beets, no problem about that. Now, there are more things that we have to do this season of the year, and things that you should do, things that you shouldn't do. Sometimes it's easy just to see the plants that they get brown and they die there. For example, tomatoes, peppers, after you're harvesting and just thinking, "Nah, just leave it there and that's it." Or just putting everything in the soil, chopping that, and that's it. It's gonna be good for the next year. So that is okay, but there are some exceptions. So for example, if you had a lot of tomatoes and or any plants, sunflowers, peppers, tomatoes, or anything, but they were suffering with something. So they had a lot of aphids, or you were having such a hard time with pests or diseases. So gray mold with especially tomatoes, potatoes, peppers, gray mold, anything that you see like white on top of the squash or zucchinis, that it was heavily infested. So mildews, that's the word for mildew. Um, any diseases. So tomatoes, for example, septoria is very common that you see these like spots on the tomatoes, and that starts spreading around the plant, and then you see the plant just turning brown, yellow, brown, and then die. So if you have that, you need to remove all of those plants out. Do not compost any of that. Do not incorporate those diseased plants with the soil. The fungus, the bacteria, even sometimes virus, anything that is affecting the plant that can overwinter and that can keep there. So next season is going to be a hot spot. You bring more tomatoes, for example. So in that case, if you were suffering with heavy infestation of fungus, gray mold, or blight with tomatoes, and then you clean or incorporate everything in the soil, thinking that it's going to be dead after the winter. Then next year, you see that it's even worse. So in that case, that's called a hot spot. You're creating your own hot spot for that disease to be spreading all around the garden. So in that case, remove that. A good practice for diseased plants like that they are full of diseases, pests, is just garbage or burning. Sometimes burning those ones. So burning or garbage, just plastic bag far from your property. And that's the best way to prevent more diseases and pests for the next season. Um, Here you can see the burning too. And now, what something that is not really diseased, so it's just the debris or the debris of the after harvesting, just from the garden. And but it was healthy, no problem at all. So you can remove that and start composting. So you can start on your own compost pile. We have a composting class this month, so you can join that for this month and start composting your own material. So that's something that you can do. Now, talking about composting, something general for composting, of course, when you join the composting class, you will know in deep how to do it successfully and have a good luck with the compost. But in general, just basic composting 101 is about piling all of this material in layers like a lasagna. So um, if you bring a lot of things from the garden, that's basically green material, right? So for a good compost, you need green and brown material, mostly brown material. Brown material is anything that is brown. So it can be the same things from the garden, grass, plants, anything that it's already dry, dehydrated, and it's brown. So, for example, this time of the year, all of the leaves falling, that is brown material that you can use for compost. And the things that you're harvesting and put in green, so that's the green material. So usually you take about 20% of the green and 80% of brown. Sometimes you can go even 50-50. So 50%, half of the material green, half of the material brown, in layers. So that's basically the composting basics about mixing the material. So in that case, you don't have a lot of browns, which is going to take longer to decompose. Uh, or not a lot of green. That especially green is the troublemaker, because when you add a lot of greens, that instead of being um, naturally decomposing, it just creates some fermentation and the smell is terrible. So that's why sometimes you have composters for the kitchen that they are like little buckets that you have for the kitchen and you start adding things there. So it's basically all green. Everything that is coming from the kitchen when you're cooking and all of this is just green material. And then after a couple of days, you see even flies around. The smell is awful. It's terrible because you're not adding anything brown. So that's the failure sometimes that for the that's when I say indoors or kitchen composter
No,
because it's just a bucket, but
Victoria.
they don't really teach you that you need to add also brown material. So that is a problem sometimes trying to do this indoors. And you need to be turning your compost regularly. So there are some composters that uh, you, naturally you can be turning the compost. They are plastic, small ones or big ones. The big ones they're expensive, um, but you can do it. Now, how about these ones with these composters that is just a pile? So you cannot really be turning the compost. So there is not really an issue if you are doing the layer of brown and greens, but it's just taking a little longer when you're turning your compost. So you allow these bacteria and these fungi, bacteria, and microorganisms to be spreading all around, to be eating the material that is there and turning that into this rich substrate, this rich compost. But well, nowadays everything about marketing, right? Because just to sell a lot of things, now you can find also these these products that is mostly liquid or powder, and they include the bacteria or fungi or the mix of that microorganisms that you can spread um, or spray on your compost, and that's gonna go faster. So yeah, that's just something to share with you that it's available on the market, but you don't need something like that. If you're not in a rush to have compost, you can use that. Just naturally, this method where you just creating the lasagna of the composting. That's it. You don't need anything extra. Now, really important for this time of the year, testing your soil. Uh, the best way to know how much fertilizer you need for the next season, how healthy is your soil, what you need if you need to do something with your soil, or sometimes it's like, no, I better just forget about that and probably go for rice beds or something different. Those like that decision making factor here is soil. So if you have healthy soil, you have healthy plants. In that case, how to know that? So you can test your pH. So that's just to start the pH of the soil to know how acid or basic is the soil. Uh, that helps because some plants they need, for example, blueberries, they want something acidic, something between 5.5 and 6 of pH. But for most vegetables and flowers, you need 6.5 to 7.5, so something almost like in neutral. So you can test your pH. That's just one some just one parameter to consider. That is important. Yes, it's important. But you can have also the full analysis where you know exactly the levels of nitrogen, potassium, phosphorus, organic matter. Also, they include the pH, well, everything about the soil. So in that case, you know exactly if your soil is good, it's not good. If you need to raise the pH, you will need to lower the pH. If you need to incorporate nitrogen or not, because sometimes we think, oh, I just add some fertilizer. Sometimes we have too much fertilizer, and that's a common mistake. Just over fertilizing the soil. When we receive some of the samples, soil samples, like a lot of them over fertilize, over fertilized, and that's why sometimes you think that you're feeding the plant, but the plant is still turning yellow, brown, or they are just tiny, they are not growing, like something is happening. And then we realize, oh yeah, that has tons of nitrogen, tons of potassium. It's high in potassium, nitrogen, or is like something is going on. But usually above, just few times that it's like under fertilized. So in that case, you cannot test on your own, except for pH, that you can find the pH kits a- any store, agricultural store, or these big stores, or even online, you can find a pH test. But for full analysis, in that case, you need to take samples and send to the laboratory. So in that case, you can do it through Cornell Cooperative Extension. And here with this QR code here, or just Cooperative Extension, Allegany, gardening section, in the gardening section, soil care, you know, uh, you will know how to take the sample, how much you need to put in the bag, and then send that to us. And usually this testing is less than 20, it's like $25, less than $30, and you need to do that probably every 2 years, 2 or 3 years. So it's not really expensive. And that's the best way because fall is the perfect moment to do this that is called the soil amendments. So soil amendments is anything, any fixing to the soil. It's anything that you need to do to improve your soil in order to grow something. So if you are planning to grow a lot of tomatoes, potatoes, eggplants, a lot of vegetables next season. So in that case, you can start now, right now in the fall, and you test your soil, then you get your results back with recommendation, And then, for example, you need to increase the pH so you can add garden lime. You need to lower the pH so you can use sulfur. You need more organic matter so you can use compost or manure. You need nutrients in general so you can be fertilizing the soil or doing something. Even sometimes it's about texture. So you need to be working on the soil. So in that case, well, when it's texture, you can start that before starting the planting. But it's mostly about like organic matter, pH, and nutrients that you need to change something there in the soil. So in that case, you allow all of these months for the soil to be working and getting fixed, because it's not that the soil is wrong, right? To be fixed. When we call fixed, and that's why I do this, it's about changing the soil, adapting the soil in order to be like perfect for what you need to plant. So in that case, we are not adapting to the soil. In that case, we are making the soil ready for what we need to plant in there. We can do this during the spring. There are questions about, well, what about the spring? So yeah, the spring we can also test the soil and then do some soil amendments. But some of them, they take weeks, even months. So the plants that you're growing there, they are not having the benefit of all the changes in the soil, because sometimes that takes longer. But that's why the fall is the perfect time of the year to test your soil and do any changes that you need to do. And for the perennials, also mulching, just protecting your plants. So mulching can be a good way to protect your plants. You can be mulching with any natural material. I highly encourage you to use natural material, not the rubber or recycled tires or things like that. Mulch, because for the winter, not a lot of problem. That still offers some insulation, but for the summer, especially summer, the hottest time of the year, that increases too much the temperature in the soil. So, and also that is not naturally decomposing and adding some organic matter. So it's like a way to recycle, reuse some of that rubber, some material, but it's not really that eco-friendly and not really helping your plants. Uh, so yeah, always go for organic material. You can add between 2 to 4 inches of mulch to protect the soil, to protect the root system of the plants, the roots of the plants. About material, like which one. So you can use straw, leaves if you don't want to buy the ones from the store. So you can use the leaves, just naturally what we are having right now, tons of leaves, um, wood chips, or anything really organic that can provide that. When using straw, be careful, because sometimes you can have any seeds in there, and then you have a lot of weeds. So a lot of grass or anything that it was there, and then it's hard time removing that when they start growing, and then you have weeds all over the garden. That's the only advice with straw. But about leaves, wood chips, no problem about that. Eh, It's organic material, no problem. So in that case, you're protecting also the soil, not only the plants. If you want also to protect the soil, because something that damages the structure of the soil is when it starts these periods start about freezing, thawing, freezing, thawing. Naturally, like decades ago, when we have like more consistent winters. So in that case, the idea of snow is to do that, just to have a natural insulation, natural blanket that protects the soil and the roots of the plants that they are still growing um, from the freezing temperatures and from these from ice and this icing and the freezing and thawing cycles. So in that case, it was snow. It's something that helps the soil in your garden. Again, when it's consistent and is always low temperature, so it's like this natural blanket there. We don't have that lately. In the last winters, we have these very uh, inconsistent temperatures. So in that case, we need to protect our soil. We need to add something there, this natural blanket. But you can right now start planting cover crops. So any clover, clover is very common around here. So clover, rye, veg, and you can allow that to grow, and then that's natural green materials. This is considered a green manure, so it's not animal manure, but it's a green manure that you can then incorporate to the soil, and that helps with nitrogen. Just high to incorporate naturally nitrogen to your soil. So that's something that you don't need even to be watering, fertilizing, anything like that. Just spraying the seeds, watering probably 1 or 2 times, and then you see them growing. And they are easy to remove later. Now about lawn care, because this is the period when we can do something to protect our lawn. So you can use a slow release high nitrogen fertilizer. We need mostly for lawn, we need we need nitrogen. Uh, Mostly more than potassium or phosphorus, so high nitrogen. And when it's slow release, so it's getting fed during the winter. So still some fertilizer there. So that this is called the dormant feeding. So the plant is not actively growing and taking the fertilizer, but slowly is there. You keep mowing this time of the year until the growth stops. So usually it's something that when you have your property, you know that just muscle memory. Um, but if not, when you know exactly is when the plant they stop growing and you see that it's not growing that much and it's about 2.5 inches. So you don't want to cut too low because you still want your lawn and we still need some of that grass, some of that those leaves, that part of the plant, to have enough nutrients to survive and to overwinter and then come back to life and keep growing healthy the next seasons. And some patches that you see that they are not doing well, especially we have very dry summer. So some patches that they are not doing well right now, so you can overseed those patches, or even when they are bare patches, just overseed and watering. So deep watering instead of constant with sprinkler or something is better. Just a deep watering um, instead of the constant shallow watering. So, and this before the soil goes below 50 degrees Fahrenheit. So something that for example, this week we're going there, like below the 50 degrees Fahrenheit, but there are some days that is above that. So you can still try in that case to overseed those patches. And about now what to prune and what not to prune. So fall, winter is perfect time for pruning trees, right? We know that. So we're not talking much about trees here because it's a good time to be pruning our trees. What is the reason for that? Because when you cut a part of the plant, so especially trees, so you're like opening the door, the window, the door for bacteria and fungi to go in there and starting some disease in your trees, right? If you do that during the summer, just compared to the winter. The trees are strong enough, so it's not like they are that susceptible, like when you cut a tomato plant, right? They are still strong. But insects and microorganisms, they are highly active during the summer. That's why it's not recommended to be pruning your trees during the summer. But fall and winter, it's a good time because less insects, less microorganisms. So we protect our trees in that way. But how about all of the other plants, we have to prune and not pruning something during the fall. So about what to prune, the yes, like go ahead and prune any dead, diseased, or damaged wood. For it can be plants, it can be trees, it can be anything that was growing in the garden, because there are some even some herbs that they still grow during the winter and you don't need to protect. For example, sage. So with sage, it keeps growing even during the winter, no problem at all. But if there are some dead, diseased parts of the plant or any in your bushes, remove those ones. Any perennials, herbaceous perennials, that they are done for the season. So hostas, daylilies, peonies, remove those ones. You don't want to leave anything there that can be used as a shelter or yeah, shelter. We can consider shelter too for diseases, but also pests or diseases. So just a perfect example that I was talking before, the tomato plants. So when they start getting like brown and dark, and you see the plant is getting more and more of the diseases. So mildew, gray mold, more there, and it's like naturally rotten even when it's still out there. So in that case, we don't want that. Remember, hot spots for diseases and pests. So we remove that. Invasive weeds or suckers. So, for example, we were growing mint, any peppermint, spearmint, and then oh, okay, the plant is done. You forget about that, and that can become an invasive plant. So just keep an eye on that one because that can be an invasive plant. Uh, and just in general, any uh, remains of the season that you see that they had something growing, any diseased plant. So just pull in your tomato plants, your cucumbers, your beans, and everything that can go to the composter. If they are healthy, they were healthy, go to the composting pile. But uh, then compost unless disease free. Oh, this is wrong here. It says go to the compost unless disease free. In this case, it's unless diseased. So just remove the disease free. Everything that goes to the compost pile is disease free. So now what not to prune? So in that case, sometimes like for example for lilacs, it's time of the year to be pruning. But in that case, just allow them to be like that, and you can prune later, like next season during the spring and summer. Because if you're pruning right now, so for these blooming spring blooming plants, so like the I see the lilacs here in the picture, so also as azaleas, rhododendron, magnolias, forsythias. They are developing right now the buds. Right now, they start developing the buds. You cannot see directly there. So when you cut them, they have to start doing that again. And with the cold freezing temperatures, those buds are damaged. So in that case, that's how you lose flowers the next season. So just avoid pruning these plants right now. You can do that later. Um, about roses, you can be still pruning some roses, but not too hard. And also removing like dead branches, dead stems, any diseased wood also that you saw that it's growing something there. So you can remove that, of course, to prevent the disease to keep taking the plant. Hydrangeas also, just let them be. Just don't touch them. Do not prune this time of the year. Um, because same reason for lilacs, the buds are forming right now. So we in that way we protect our flowers for the next season. And for wildlife, so if you are concerned about the bees and well, there are many, not only bees, many wildlife that they are pollinators, and now is the time of the year when you can allow some of the garden leftovers, the debris of the garden to be there. Remember, only if it's healthy. Anything, nothing with pest or disease. Uh, you can use that as a shelter for bees, for any insects, some beetles, some any insect that they want to be there overwintering. You can also use bee hotels. So we had a class about bee hotel a couple months ago. One of our master gardeners, she loves to do the bee hotel class. So that's a way that you offer um, shelter for pollinators. So also just allowing some of the plants to be there. Just keep an eye, just check that it's not with diseases or anything that can be worse for the next season. Other than that, you can use the stalks of the sunflowers, or you can buy also the hollow, hollow stems to make like your own bee hotel, or just leaving those ones out there. And in that case, the bees, they naturally find those spots and they use that as a shelter for overwinter. Um, any like the cover crops, ornamental grasses, coneflowers, those can be used for pollinators. And now, if you want to plant something for late season nectar to offer some food for the pollinators, so examples for this, asters, goldenrod, sedum, they can be used. So here are the pictures that you can grow in your property to offer like these nectar sources to pollinators. And when you, well, it's if we're talking about just gardening, you don't want to offer this shelter for wildlife, pollinators, or anything like that. You can do the heavy cleanup. That's good even for pests and diseases when you have a lot of pests and diseases during the season. So in that case, you remove all of that. If you want to provide some of this shelter for pollinators, in that case, you can allow some of that mess to remain there. Remember, if it's healthy, if the plants were healthy. In that case, you provide some of that shelter. If not, don't feel guilty about cleaning your garden completely, especially when you suffer a lot. Well, your plants suffer a lot with diseases. And well, also you, because when our plants are sick, we are also suffering. Just like, what can we do for our plants? We don't like to see that. And um, go ahead, you can start right now and start planning for your next season, for your next garden. So just an example, tomatoes, you can start that. I always say tomatoes because I love tomatoes and peppers, but mostly tomatoes. And I can wait to start my tomatoes for the next year. But right now, I cannot start tomatoes, but I can start testing the soil. I can start uh, planning like which variety I'm gonna try next year if I want to try something new, uh, and everything that you want for the next season. And for whatever that you have trouble or you just want to ask, uh, reach out so you can go to allegany.cce.cornell.edu or send me an email. Sometimes it takes a little longer because there's a lot of emails coming, but we always try to, or I always try to go back and respond as soon as possible. Especially, well, this time of the year, not much, but during the season is when even sometimes the AI or GPTs are telling something crazy, and then people are killing the plants or doing something, and then like, what's happening? So yeah, sometimes we cannot fully rely on these new technologies. So that's when you can send the pictures, send the questions to my email, or just call in monthly email, because it's nice to see the pictures and, oh yeah, this is happening, or you can do this or can do that. Also for soil testing, any questions or to bring samples, feel free to bring your samples. And well, we have still a couple minutes if you want to stay past noon. Uh, Any questions that you have right now?
I have a question about if I plant bulbs now, they come up in the spring. Should I leave the plant and let it just finish its blooming, or can I cut it back?
Sorry, I didn't hear the first part because it was going through my.
Regarding
Yeah,
bulbs. So
yes.
once they bloom in the spring, and they're all finished blooming, let's say they're tulips, how long should I let them sit there drooping before I cut them back?
When you see them,
Cut them off at the ground.
yeah, if the plant is still like the flower can start dropping the flower, and
Mm-hmm.
naturally it's a natural process. You don't need to do anything mostly about that. Um, if you want to cut it, so just like okay, it's done for the season. If it's getting brown, turning yellow, brown, that you see something is like growing there, like some disease. In that case, you can cut early just to prevent the disease affecting the plants. If not, just naturally leave them there. It's mostly
Okay.
sometimes aesthetically. If you don't like to see that, you can cut the bulb. There's no problem about that.
Okay. Thank you.
Welcome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Any other question?
I've got a question.
Yes.
I have a hydrangea that I cut the leaves back on because of blight. Is that going to affect the blooms for next year?
For hydrangeas,
Yes.
no, if it wasn't highly affected and you cut the part that was affecting the plant,
Right.
so in that case, yeah, you take the disease part.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, the only recommendation is when you do that, when you cut any diseased part of the plant, like I said, just burn or throw far from the plants, because that can come back. If
Yeah.
some of those spores they are still there, it's gonna come back.
I have one more question.
Yeah,
My hydrangea now, I'll get 3 feet of leaves, but only 2 flowers.
that happened this year. I had questions about that, like leaves and no blooms. So also the plant can be stressed. So this year we had some like very dry period of time, very hot and dry.
Hmm.
And there are some of these changes of temperature. The plant also like same like humans can get stressed, plants can get stressed too. Because yeah, you were not the only one experiencing that this year.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so for that can improve, hopefully improve next year.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have another question having to do with mulch.
Yeah.
Um, I have a brand new bed that was put in for shrubs in the front of the house. Are you saying that that bare soil, it's a mixture of soil and compost? I'm not going to put any shrubs in until the spring. Were you saying that that bed would benefit from being mulched over the winter? It has nothing in it.
No, if you it's new, right? Like you just put that in there.
It's brand new. It's brand new.
Yeah, no, in that case, no. It's mostly over time that you want to keep some protection there, some mulch. But just for one season, like from now, is you just put that one there. And so it's not like mandatory that you have to mulch that right away.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
But
Thank you.
yeah, welcome.
Just a minute.
Okay, if any question, let me check here in the chat. Okay. Perfect. If we don't have more questions now, because it's past noon, um, even if you remember the questions later and you want to, oh, I forgot to ask, send me an email. Shoot an email. And that's it. So stay tuned. We have composting classes this month in person. So if you want to come to Belmont and have these programs about composting, hydroponics, and the first one in November is about I forgot the other one that is also in person. Terrariums, also how to create terrariums and do something gardening related during the cold time of the year. Just CCE Allegany, you can see the post is not publicly yet, but soon we're offering those ones so you can register. Thank you for being here. I hope this was useful for you, and have happy fall gardening season. Enjoy your weekend, and I will see you next time.
Thank you. Thank
You're
you.
welcome.